So we'll switch to English. I'm sure you speak more French than you say. Thank you for being in this roundtable. First of all, I checked with the video on YouTube that you have, Jens, and I was surprised to learn that there are 4 to 6 million men suffering from erectile dysfunction, and when I check for France, it's only 500,000. So you have to explain to me the difference.
I would give a different answer if I would be speaking in Germany now than if I'm speaking here. No, I think the interesting thing is obviously because it's such a taboo topic, it's very hard to actually get prevalence data on that, because it's a lot of people that choose not to talk about it. I would assume it's kind of similar in terms of prevalence for both countries, but maybe it's less in France.
So you think it's more taboo in France than in Germany?
I think it's really taboo everywhere. It is something that I think is changing over time, and it is something that we're advocating, of course, for, but it is still something that's not being talked about a lot either in France or Germany.
Okay. So both of you have the same type of economic model, because you need to sell to doctors, which you mentioned it's quite difficult. Can you explain, Edouard, your view of how to sell? Oh, you were in part of Article 51, so it's different. But
but our approach is very similar to Krenner's one. I mean, before Article 51, we already had a team on field that was kind of promoting the device to the doctors. And we were partnering with the pharma companies to basically use and leverage on their sales force to kind of convince the doctors, because they have an asset that we didn't have at the time, which is 10 to 15 medical delegates that are on the field, that know the doctors, that know how to speak to them. And so we used their network to get to them. And then we started to build our own kind of sales force of key account manager to basically train, and so that doctors get the most out of Odysseid and out of digital ophthalmology in general. So I think that yes, now we have reimbursement, which is great, which is another asset, and it finishes convincing the doctors. But you still do need a lot of groundwork and field work to convince, pretty much like a medicine, even more maybe, because solutions like ours have an impact on their workflow, on their organization, and so they do need a lot of kind of customization depending on the organization of the centers.
And Jens, on that?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think we have to recognize and be humble about the fact that the solutions are new to doctors. It is not common for a doctor to prescribe digital products, so we need to invest a lot in the education of these people, and that's what we do. I think there are 3 elements to that. One is really the sales force. The second one is we try to be really present on all the medical congresses and engage with the community there. And third, it's scientific publication, peer-reviewed journals. It is important to be present there as well, and underscore that it is a serious medical approach.
On a practical point of view, what is more convincing for doctors to adopt your
Shall I say the American way or the French way?
European way?
So European way is compensation, at least acknowledging that providing a digital solution to patients is not time-free, right? It consumes a lot of time. So that means that public authorities have to recognize that they do have to compensate the medical time, especially in a world where doctors are paid for the time they spend doing, whether it is a surgery or whether it is a medical act. It should be no different for the digital solutions. And as I said in my presentation, there was a tipping point for us when the public authorities started compensating the time that it took for doctors to onboard and monitor the patient. So for me, obviously you need to have clinical trials, you need to be a medical device. These are elements that are shared within the whole medical world. But for digital solutions and remote monitoring, I think that for us the tipping point was compensation of medical time to finish kind of convincing the doctors. At least that's what we've seen.
Is it the same in Germany? There is a type of compensation?
There is not by default, but you can get it for your products. We have it for our products. I think I agree. It's very important. I think the other element is really taking away. I always say, I mean, they are doctors. Most people, they're not IT experts. And I think there's a big fear that if they start prescribing these products, that their patients will call them and essentially saying, hey, how do I install this on my phone?
How do I use the,
exactly.
the product?
So this is something that we need to take away from the doctors, which is also, again, why I think this one-on-one support, this human support, is very important for us companies to provide, so that we can really tell the doctors, this is, nothing you have to worry about.
Yeah, this is so true. I mean, what we build is not digital experiences, it's an entire new service, and you do need to have like this support, this one-to-one relationship with doctors and patients to make sure that it doesn't become like a huge like administrative burden for doctors. You need to save time for them, you need to improve the healthcare process, and you need to handle the small problems, the small technical problems that patients can have, because otherwise doctors, they will be overwhelmed by that.
And coming back to the Salesforce, finally, Salesforce is part of your company, or do you subcontract out Salesforce to build your...
So we have a funnel where the Salesforce of our partner is basically spreading the word, targeting the doctors that are interested in our solutions, and then we handle the training, the follow-up, the data management, the kind of the customization for doctors, which is great because you have big volumes handled by a big team of delegates. Then you have a team on our side, like 5 medical delegates that are doing the training and the kind of the custom-made relationship with the doctor. And then the follow-up is done by both teams, depending on the difficulties that they have on field. So that's how we manage. It's really like a common responsibility.
For us, it's a bit different. We own the urologists ourselves. Unfortunately, I would say I've seen not a lot of very successful partnerships between digital companies and large established pharma companies in the past. So we have that belief that I think we are the best at really addressing urologists. We do partner with pharma companies, but more to address other groups of doctors, for example, general practitioners, and there we have partnerships. And I think if you do partnerships, it's very important to request licensing fees from your pharmaceutical partners, because of course they have huge portfolios of many drugs to sell, and there's not really a buy-in from the pharma partner. What often happens is that they not really talk about your products because it's an opportunity cost, and so there really needs to be top management buy-in, I think, from a pharma partner to make it a successful partnership.
In terms of adoption, you mentioned, both of you, that you had a tremendous increase in adoption rate. Coming back a few years ago, it was very difficult to get this adoption rate. So what do you think is the main pinpoint that provoke the adoption of digital therapeutics now? Is there something, because everyone has an iPhone or a smartphone, is it something that is new in the way to treat and to care patients? What?
I think awareness has a lot to do with it. To be honest, for us it was a long and winding road to get to that point. We started deploying the solution back in 2018. It took us approximately 6 months to get to 200 patients and 10 doctors. Then it took us 2 years to get to 200 doctors and 3,000 patients. And now we're at 20, and it took us a year to get to 20,000 prescriptions and 1,000 doctors. So you can see kind of the evolution. But in short, for us, what made the difference is when you started to have public authorities backing the whole digital transformation, and made the doctor realize that digital solution would be part of their workflow. And so somehow they have to get up to speed with it. And you start with early adopters. I mean, it's the basic curve of adoption. You know, like you have your early adopters, so your key opinion leaders that are here to modernize kind of the entire workflow for everyone. And then I'd say the public authorities for us, the kind of the stamp, now you need to get into it, was the tipping point.
I'd say there are several factors. So Corona was massively helpful because I think it taught people that healthcare can be connected with their smartphone. I don't know how many it was in France, but I think in Germany we had about 70% of the entire population using this Corona alert app. That changed the mindset of people. The other thing is that is I think also what you said, reimbursability. It has to be perceived value comes a lot in Europe. In Europe, as patients, we are used to having our health insurance pay for our healthcare, right? This is how the European system works. And if you're not part of that system, people think you're not a high quality or a good solution. I think that is different now that you are part of the system, gives the signal both to doctors as well as patients that yes, this is something I really need to try.
We have had the same issue with telemedicine. Before it was reimbursed, nobody would take consideration of telemedicine. But Jens, you are both in Germany and France. My first question is, what difference you can see between both countries? And my second question is, how do we fight against US to exist in a health environment?
Yeah, let me start with the second one. I think, in many cases, when it comes to uses of technology, Europe has always been a laggard, and I think it's something that saddens me as a European. I think in healthcare, in this specific area, Europe is ahead of the US. And we have much better reimbursability frameworks for digital healthcare in France, in Germany, in other European countries than the US has at the moment. I think that is a huge opportunity that we have in Europe, which benefits the patients. And I think, I'm hoping we can build on that. That being said, of course, we are also looking towards the US. I think it's still the biggest healthcare market in the world, something where we do want to go. I do spend some time over there as well, and there are other pathways in the US, but I think we in Europe, we have done a great step forward with these reimbursability frameworks. When it comes to differences, I'd say I think there are more similarities, to be honest. I think in terms of the pathology of the disease, of course, it's the same. Now we have very similar frameworks, reimbursement frameworks in France and Germany. I think there are then, of course, some differences in the way the systems work. So France, in our case, for example, has a lot more sexologists than Germany has. So we have to target both sexologists and urologists. Germany, everything is handled by urologists. So there are these nuances where there's differences, but I think overall, I see a lot of similarities, which is also the reason why we choose to be in France, because I think it's a market that is very similar to Germany.
For me, set aside the fact that indeed the US is the biggest unified healthcare market in the world, there is still a philosophical difference between the US and Europe. And you see that we had a discussion yesterday about the AI Act and about the fact that in Europe, by definition, will protect people, while in the US we have an approach where you basically endorse innovation and then you protect, right? And so if we don't change that somehow in Europe, I feel that we're always kind of lag behind the US, especially in healthcare. Now, I think that for telesurveillance per se, and for what has happened in the DTX space, Europe is a bit ahead of the curve for the first time, to be honest, when it comes to go-to-market and generalization of a practice that is honestly super important. The problem is, what are the conditions to access this market? Now that you have the philosophy, you start to see a lot of stuff that you need to have before you enter the market, whether it is for DIGA, like a clinical trial, plus the ISO 27001, the interoperability in France, Certificat ANS, your clinical trials, before you get the chance to put your file on the market. This is what worries me. I think that for once we are a bit ahead, for once, But if we start to add like a lot of conditions and we don't think about unifying indeed the European market, most likely it's going to happen what always happened with innovation. The US is going to be ahead of the curve. And again, set aside the financial aspect and the fact that the US is the biggest unified healthcare market in the world.
Okay, so we have 1 minute left, and I will keep the tough question for you, the last one. What about generative AI in your view of the future of your app, digital therapeutics?
For me, AI is here to stay. I think it's changing all of our lives in every aspect, and of course we have to use it in our apps as well. It's something that we're working on. Of course, there are regulatory things to consider. If you're putting AI in your product, it becomes regulators are, as of now, they don't know how to deal with that, right? Like it's sort of a black box. So how do you actually, as a regulator, evaluate the efficacy of it? We use it a lot already in customer support and other areas, and I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for customer support, it's super great, especially now that you have like voice recognition and that you can talk basically with an AI. I mean, you can answer a lot of problems, the technical problems that patients will have. They could basically talk to an AI to get the answers. That's the thing that is the most obvious. And then for us, it's more like predictive analysis on the alert side. As I was explaining, we have a lot of data points. For a patient that is staying a year, we get 77 visual acuity tests per year. So it gives you a lot of information that potentially can help you anticipate the drop of visual acuity and potentially anticipate the treatment. But then comes the regulation part, the validation of those algorithms, how you navigate within a very complex and regulated world. That's the question. But there is a lot of opportunity. On our end, we also look at it from a productive aspect. How can we improve the way we work and the way we improve our processes in-house to improve eventually the quality of our work ahead?
So we have been told that we don't have any question and answer session. So thank you, Jens, and thank you, Edouard, and